Welcome to the Trailhead from UltraSignup, where big adventures begin. Trail running is so much more than just a sport. It's a community, a culture, a way of seeing the world. On this show, we're not dissecting splits or debating shoe specs. We're here to get to the heart of it all, the people, the places, and the stories that speak to the soul of the sport. Join me, Zoe Rome, and my co-host, Brendan Leonard, as we'll bring you conversations with the everyday athletes, local legends, quirky characters, and creative minds who make trail running what it is. Messy, joyful, gritty, and deeply human. Because it's not just about chasing finish lines. It's about the friendships forged on long climbs, the lessons learned in the pain cave, and the weird, wild moments that remind us why this sport is about so much more than the miles. Hey trail friends, we want to hear from you. UltraSignup is running a quick listener survey to help us keep making podcasts that you love. It only takes a few minutes, and your feedback really helps us shape what's next. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thanks for being part of our trail running community. After a long run in the mountains, recovery is just as important as the miles themselves. And the truth is, whatever your ritual looks like, Running Warehouse has everything you need to make it happen. From shoes and apparel that feel good the second you kick off your muddy trail shoes, to recovery tools that help sore muscles forgive you for all that vert, Running Warehouse has it covered. Nutrition, hydration, comfort, you name it, they stock it. What I love is how easy it is to find everything all in one place. No hunting around, no guesswork. Just the gear that gets you back out the door and ready for your next adventure. So whether recovery for you means a massage tool, a comfy pair of slides, or just stocking up on your favorite post-run recovery drink, Running Warehouse is your go-to. Check out their full lineup today at runningwarehouse.com. Today on the Trailhead, we're joined by Sarah Lavender Smith, writer, runner, and one of trail running's most passionate storytellers. Sarah has spent years exploring not just the trails themselves, but the lives, lessons, and wild adventures that she and others find on them. From her previous work as a running coach to her book, The Trail Runner's Companion, Sarah has also built a career helping runners of all kinds find joy and meaning in this silly sport. We'll dig into what keeps her inspired, how she balances writing and running, and what the trails have taught her about resilience and life itself. Glad to have you, Sarah.
Oh, thank you, Zoe. I'm so excited to be here with you two. I think it's really cool that two of my favorite writers connected to make a podcast.
Yeah.
Wow.
God forbid two writers start a podcast. Yeah. But I'm so curious, Sarah, how did you get started in writing? Because I believe you also have a background in journalism. Where did that really begin for you?
Right. So my first plan was to be a journalist, a hard-hitting political journalist. I went to journalism school, and it was tough going. I really suffered feelings of failure, and I thought there's something wrong when I'm working as a daily news reporter in a traditional newspaper office, and I have the night cops shift, and I'm listening to the police scanner silently praying, please don't let anything happen. Like, I did not like chasing breaking news. I said, okay, something's wrong with this. And I wanted to start a family, and having babies is really not conducive to being a daily news reporter. So I did work I worked in a newspaper for a while. I'd worked at a legal affairs reporter, newspaper doing legal affairs reporting, which I also didn't like. I think I started crying when I was in federal court trying to report on a patent infringement case involving something having to do with biochemistry, and it was all Greek to me. I'm like, how am I going to write about this? So I was pretty miserable. So I had babies instead and kind of mommy tracked my career. And as I did that, running increasingly took on an outsized role in my life. Running, became my escape and my way to feel some satisfaction that I was lacking professionally. And so I increasingly got into the world of trail and ultra running back when I was living in the Bay Area. And one thing led to another. And starting around 2008, I started writing for good old Trail Runner magazine back when it was an actual magazine. And so Zoe, you and I overlapped in that way a little bit. And I
Oh, yeah.
loved, I joke that I wanted to be a hard hitting reporter, and then the hard hitting became like the foot hitting the dirt. And so I loved writing about the culture and sport emerging, the stories and people in this fringe sport that was going more and more mainstream. So that's what I did. And then I had a year of chronic injury back in 2013, which really made me relearn a lot of what I knew about running. And, there's the old saying, sometimes when you're broke down, you got to rebuild completely to fix yourself. Or I just mangled that saying. But basically, I relearned a lot about running, and that led to me opening my coaching practice in 2014. So I started coaching and did that for about 8 years. And it was in the course of doing that I wrote that book, The Trail Runner's Companion. So writing has evolved along with my running, and I've always been a blog. I mean, I was a blogger way back when. And now I'm doing the modern equivalent of blogging, which is now rebranded as a newsletter. And I have a weekly Substack that I write every Wednesday.
And the name of that Substack is?
It's Mountain Running and Living, and it has the tagline of, let me get this right, personal essays with practical advice about trail running, mountain life, and midlife grit. So I bring a perspective of being in midlife in my mid-50s and try to give voice to midlife athletes to make them take their running and athleticism seriously, but also not too seriously.
How much more fun / easier was it to write about something you care about versus patent infringement lawsuits?
Yeah, I have to say I am freelancing less and less because I love the Substack platform, and I like writing for myself. And maybe that's kind of lazy that I don't want to be edited, but I do like writing what I feel moved to write about rather than getting an assignment.
I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
And have felt so for many years now. So,
although as someone who has edited both of y'all, you were delights to work with and turned in extremely clean copy. So we do appreciate that.
That's the copy editor in me. Before I was a reporter, I was a copy editor for several years. And so, yeah, ask me about AP and Chicago style and the difference between the two and how to hyphenate compound modifiers. That's my jam.
Well, how do we feel about
the
Oxford comma straw poll in the room? Oxford comma, yay or nay? Serial
so
comma.
That's using the last comma in a series. I do that now for literary writing. Yeah, I don't drop that last comma anymore.
I'm a recent convert, like last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I'm pro Oxford comma.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to use all the punctuation. It's also one of the few punctuations that I know I can deploy correctly every single time. I've never used a semicolon correctly. I don't know how to make an em dash with my keyboard, so I just put a hyphen whenever I intend to use an em dash.
We gotta work on that. Is it Shift Control Command?
I can never remember what the specific, that's like the only thing,
now.
Sitting between me and like an award-winning New Yorker feature right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yep.
I just would hate to have to edit and punctuate the lines that just happened, all the parenthetical comments. Anyway, actually, it's fun.
You don't go into transcription then. That's like a nightmare. Like, oh my God.
So one of the things I really love and appreciate reading on mountain running and living that you sort of touched on is writing about midlife. And I always feel as a woman who is aging naturally in a mountain town, I feel like I'm serving as like the control group for an entire species, because the women where I live here near Aspen like are aging kind of more on that Twinkie aging track. Time goes by, but they are ne'er changed. And so I feel like there is something, unfortunately, in our culture, a little bit brave about being a woman who is aging and talking about it in public and writing about it in ways that are both frank and also like not writing about it in ways that are frank and joyful. I'm curious, like, what your approach to writing about aging, particularly in the context of running and athletics, has been like for you.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I write about my own experience, but lately, and Zoe, this kind of ties into a lot of themes that you talk about in your other podcast about diet culture and wellness culture. Lately, I've just found myself pushing back against the self-improvement bandwagon and getting off of it in terms of, you know, so much about wellness culture and aging has to do with striving to get back to something, whether it's back to your younger self or as a runner, back to your faster times. And so a lot of what I'm working on now is just accepting how you are on any given day and doing the best with what you've got rather than feeling like you have to improve. And so what does it mean to improve? If you're a runner and you can't, you're you're struggling to maintain 10-minute miles when you used to have a marathon goal pace in the low sevens, like what do you do with that now? How do you feel good about like feeling like a 10-minute mile is fast rather than pathetically slow? So aging is a lot about acceptance and just finding the flow of where you're at now. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's definitely a struggle to make peace with where you're at and also make peace with your past decisions and choices in life, and to just celebrate the year that you're in and to not fight aging. Like, I think a lot of what propelled me to run in my 40s and even before that was this sense of this quest to prove something and to attain something and to achieve something. And, and to part of that was fighting aging, fighting because you equate aging with weakness or decay. And to change that, to have it be more flowing and just accepting of whatever pace you're at and whatever stage you're at now, that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm 56, which is so freaking old.
Jesus, whoa. I was just scrolling through I don't want to like totally pivot to your Hardrock story, or maybe we can, maybe it's a good time, but like you're like one of, I think, 8 women finishers, if my counting is correct, 8 women finishers of Hardrock, which is not a chill 5K in the backyard. Over
just
the
a
age
little
of 50.
park run.
Yeah, of 8 women over the age of 50 out of 114 people who finished. So what is that? I would argue you're not decaying. I mean, I don't know. What is it? How does that make you feel about the state of things and the state of yourself?
Well, first of all, I'm just so glad I finished. It would have been so painful to DNF Hardrock after all I had brought to it. Like I wanted to do that so much. And there was a point midway through Hardrock where it's not that I wanted to DNF. It's just, I was feeling like, oh my God, the wheels are coming off. I really might collapse and not finish. Like I'm going to have to live with a DNF. And it was just such a awful feeling that started to take on a feeling of inevitability. And so to like rescue myself from that and keep going was really, really hard. So I'm just so grateful to have finished, even though I'm like number 100 out of 114, which is definitely toward the back of the pack. Just thank God I finished, because as your listeners may or may not know, it's so hard to get into Hardrock. And then if you DNF, you lose all of your accumulated lottery tickets and then have to start over, which means you basically can never get in. And that's like, it was heartbreaking for me to be leapfrogging with this really, really cool woman in her early 60s who like me had been in the lottery for a decade and had 512 tickets. And she went badly off course. And I mean, like me, she was puking and suffering. But then what really did her in is she took like a 2-mile detour off course and then another 2-mile. So she didn't make it. And it's like, I just feel so sad for her and so grateful I finished.
You have a fantastic write-up about the race.
Oh, thank you.
So much vomiting, though. Oh my God. Like, not
It
like
was the
you were,
worst.
not like this is a hard race.
Like
It's hard if everything,
vomiting.
right? If everything
It was
goes
the worst.
right. It was like an exorcism.
Can we
Yeah.
talk about puking? Because I spent first...
Now's the portion of the podcast where we talk
Okay,
about
so
puking.
I always was able to eat like a horse and was really proud. Like I had kind of a superiority attitude
Just apples
about
and
like,
hay.
I can eat, and it wasn't until... Wait, I missed that. What'd you say, Brendan?
Said just apples and hay. Like that's all you
apples
ate.
and I eat like a horse. And carrots.
And carrots.
So no, I'm like, what's everybody's problem? It wasn't until 2021. So yeah, only 4 years ago that I started to experience a gag reflex. And then it was in 2022 or 2022's High Lonesome 100 that I had my first like awe-inspiring projectile vomit, which I later realized was triggered by Tums. Like I had always thought of Tums antacid as being a relief, like you get rid of all this belly gas, but it was like a match to gasoline. And
A2 Tums.
Yeah. So that was my first puke experience, and it was lovely because my kids, who were then in their early 20s, were crewing and pacing me, and they taught me the saying boot and rally. They're like, boot and rally, Mom. So I'm like, boot and rally. So I got through the puking. I'm like, I learned from it. It was a learning experience. But that type of puking is a relief. It's like you empty your stomach and hit reset. So this Hardrock experience was a problem with citric acid that turned my gastric acid into fire water. So like my mouth broke out in sores, my throat was burned, and it was not relieving at all. And so that was a struggle, that my whole stomach felt like it was twisted and cramping. So anytime I could actually shuffle and jog during the last 20 miles of Hardrock, it would trigger just intense stomach cramps and dry heaving. It was like, I did not think my body could make such horrific noises.
I think a phrase
That's
that
much detail, by the way.
No, that's what we're here for.
I think like a description that will live rent-free, as the kids say, rent-free in my head forever, is you talked about like projectile vomiting from like a hellish cat-cow yoga position.
Oh, this spasmodic cat-cow.
Yes, spasmodic cat-cow.
Grand Swamp Pass with like,
yes,
from the Grand Swamp Pass headwall where there's the iconic view of Island Lake down below. I was just creating
that is iconic
on my hands and knees. It was awful.
Do you mind if I just read a really quick passage from your Substack? Okay, so part of me felt enthusiastic to be halfway through the route, but the other part had an unsettled feeling of, uh-oh. All at once, as I was sitting in an aid station chair, nausea hit, and I politely announced I was going to throw up. Sometimes we vomit mid-ultra to empty, overly full stomachs, and it's like turning a bucket upside down and generating a wave of water. My first puke felt different. It felt like a flamethrower. Everything that came up and out of my throat flowed like a burning river and scorched my tongue. This is the running writing we're here for.
I don't remember writing that. That's so funny.
I
That was
copied
an
and pasted
engineer aid
that.
station.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just after, that was an engineer pass coming into URA. So that was only like 20 hours into it.
Truly,
It's funny, like you, sorry, you talk about like being 100th out of 114 or whatever, and like I'm like, and you're comparing yourself to the 114 other people who finished, but like reading this and like talking about what you did to like the normal person who's just like working an accounting job somewhere and like, I don't know, the Midwest, like this is insane.
Yeah.
You are truly the poet laureate of like high velocity reversal of culinary fortune. This is like Pulitzer right there.
Oh my
Thank
God.
you. It makes me want to, I'm just so frustrated because I had thought of everything that could go wrong, and I had really worked on my nutrition and hydration and done a good job. And, I have made progress. Like my hydration and electrolytes seemed okay, and I never got dehydrated. Like I was able, that kept working. But in hindsight, I'm like, God, I could have really prevented. I just needed a bottle of pink Pepto-Bismol and fewer fruity, tangy fruit kind of snacks. It's like certain chews and gels were just too much citric acid. I should have. So anyway, of course, like even though I vowed, like I'm retiring, I'm not doing this again. Now, just I have the curiosity of how could I do if I could have prevented that or troubleshot it better.
Well, how curious are you really? Are you like maybe out?
Pretty curious.
So you're back in the lottery?
I'm also curious, your mind starts imagining doing the Hardrock route in the opposite direction because it reverses direction. And I'm glad I did it the counterclockwise way. But now I find myself in my mind toying with all of those mountain passes, doing them in the other direction. So
Sounds like a true addict. Like, this is how you get 116 races on your UltraSignup page, Sarah.
Yeah.
Blink if you need help.
Yeah.
Actually, to that point, I think for me, some of the writing I've really enjoyed reading from you over the years that you've both published on your Substack and that you also published in Trail Runner magazine, Rest in Peace, was you had written about reevaluating your relationship with alcohol. And rather than sort of like an all or nothing sobriety journey, you espoused what I think is becoming like an increasingly popular sort of like, as the Gen Z kids say, sober, curious perspective. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I mean, gosh, I'm trying to write a whole book about it, so it's hard to condense it. Yeah, I really had a come to Jesus moment in 2019, where I mean, I was a heavy drinker, following a pretty, I was a party girl. So let's just leave it at that. But in high school and college, before I became athletic, I really had a druggy phase, and it was a lot of fun in a lot of ways. But I did.
Are we talking like hacky sack poncho phase? Like,
oh no, I was effed up. Like I mean, it was very much a part of my identity, intellectually and otherwise. Is through, and there was an escapism and rebelliousness in high school and college that involved a lot of hard drugs, as well as alcohol. But I grew up the youngest of 5 with much older siblings in the 1970s. So suffice to say, my household contained a lot of adult beverages and alternative mind-altering substances that I was introduced to at a very young age, which made made some really fun times. But so, um, I alcohol was just part of adulthood and not too much of a problem, but it was just very much normalized to drink heavily, by which I mean like, at least splitting a bottle of wine nightly with my husband, plus having a beer or two. So that is a lot of that's a lot of unnutritious calories for one thing, or empty nutrition. And it affected my sleep and athleticism. But I always felt like, as a serious runner, I could just run it off. And it was really in my, let's see, 2019, I would have been it would have been 50. Um, during, it more and more was affecting my sleep. And I remember in fall of 2019, just having this one night where I was struggling a lot. I have chronic insomnia from, waking up at around 2 a.m. because you kind of pass out from the half bottle of wine and beer. But your sleep quality isn't great. And then you wake up in the middle of the night needing to go pee, and your mind starts, my mind would turn on. So my sleep was wretched. And I was really stressed out at that point too. My mom was in serious decline because my dad had already died, and my mom was in assisted living, and her dementia was just getting worse and worse. And I was just, my whole life, a lot of what propelled my actions was in opposition to my mother, to be different than what my mother role modeled. And here I'm like, oh my God, I'm pickling my brain. I'm going to end up like my mother. And I just felt horrible about myself. And I really wanted to get back to how I had felt a month earlier, in September of 2019, when I was doing the week-long Grand to Grand Ultra self-supported stage race, which is like the North America version of Marathon des Sables. And you are off the grid, self-supported, subsisting on only the water they provide you and the calories you can carry on your back. And it's like this week of basically being sober and stripped bare to the essentials. And it was always like this empowering week where I realized how I could make do with the bare minimums, and I just felt my best. And that year, I had won it. It was my third time at that race, and it felt like this lifetime achievement award. It just was my peak performance. I won the race and was the only woman in the top 10 overall. And then I come home and fall into all these bad habits and just felt so hypocritical as a as an athlete. And I was still coaching then as a coach and everything. So from that moment, I did the dry January thing and really reduced how much I drank. But the key for me is just, and it was a process, but now like I completely gave up wine because Chardonnay, I feel like at a certain point, it almost felt like it was allergic or toxic in my body in terms of how it affected my sleep and brain. But I still love a good IPA. I admit I am a beer drinker. So the way I do it now is I just don't drink at home. Like I never drink at home, even though my husband does. But when we go out, I'll have a beer, and just one beer. Not like, my tolerance is so low. I'm like, one pint of woohoo. That's it for me.
Someone take away my phone.
It's a long answer, but it's been evolutionary. But I think by framing it as a choice rather than a deprivation, it makes me achieve that. It makes me not rebel against myself. Yeah.
You mentioned the Grand to Grand Ultra, which is it's not a super popular thing for a lot of people in my view of the ultra world. And you've done it 4 times, including last fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What is it about it that keeps you coming back? And like, why do you think it's such a great experience for you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I did it 4 times. Starting with their inaugural year in 2012, and I also did their one and only one-off sister race, the Mana to Mana on the Big Island of Hawaii in 2017, which was a one-time event with a lot of, I mean, God, that's another story. I shouldn't call it a shit show. It was hilarious. But we all survived, but it didn't happen again. So I love this event for many reasons. And I don't think it's caught on in popularity as much as it could for a couple reasons. One is it has deliberately been very off the grid, and its media coverage has not been all that great. And so it doesn't have live streaming. It hasn't had the kind of media attention that something like Cocodona has, and that helped Cocodona grow to what it is in a mere 5 years. Also, I think it's been eclipsed by the new popularity of 200 milers. For me, I love the self-supported stage racing format, which again, that is comes from the Marathon des Sables. So it's 6 stages. The first 5 stages range in distance from about a marathon to a 50K, and then with a really, really, really challenging 50 miler in the middle. And then the final day is a kind of a celebratory shorter sprint. But what I like about it is, I mean, one of the many things I like about it is every day is a race. So you get up, you have the recovery time from the prior day. You get up, you race the stage. You're very by yourself and immersed in the wilderness, seeing very few other competitors during that race because it's pretty small and it's super remote. But then you get to camp and you have the recovery time at camp and the socialization at camp, which is just wonderful. I just love every afternoon and evening at camp. And you really bond with you're sharing a communal tent with 7 other smelly people, and they become your best friends. It's like a tribe. And you all over the week become increasingly feral and uninhibited. And so it's just a really good social time, and nobody's on their devices. You have no GPS. You'll get penalized if you use any tracking. You have no connection to the outside world. So it reignites the art of conversation, and you have no crews, no pacers. Everything you need is on your back. All they supply is water and a communal tent. So I just think that is so unlike anything in modern life now. And I love the racing format because I haven't done a 200 miler, but based on how I devolve into death marching in most of my 100 milers, I don't know if I want to do a sleep deprived 200 where you're just slogging through the second half. Whereas in a week-long stage race, you recover and then you can actually run on tired legs and try to race each day. And so I think that's really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that we're just like, no, 200. That sounds good. Let's try that. 100's not long enough. That's funny. Yeah. Do you know how much 6 days worth of food weighed for you last year?
I know it to the ounce. I could get my spreadsheet. Yeah, no, every ounce matters. Yeah.
Is it like a pound a day? Was it like 6 pounds of food, or was it like?
Well, so my pack at its on day 1 when it's heaviest before I had eaten through anything, with both my water bottles full, weighed just about 20 pounds, and a little less than half of that was the food. So I think my food weighed maybe 8.5 pounds, and then the rest was mandatory safety gear, clothing, and my luxury item of a journal and a pen. I really went wild with my luxury item.
Whoa.
And the water.
Okay. And when you get to camp on like your communal camp on like night 4, are you like, guys, I have peanut M&Ms. Does anybody want some? Or is
No,
no one
because
sharing food at all?
I am competitive and following the rules by the book. And you are not allowed to trade and swap food or give food away. So like
Wow.
other people may secretly do that, but I'm like, I'm going to follow the rules. Because I was in 2019, I got penalized and given an hour penalty and still won it. But so they're very, very strict.
Wow.
What was that for? What was the penalty?
My penalty was after the penultimate stage, they weighed our food, and you're not only are you required to start the week with a certain number of calories, but at the end of each stage, you're supposed to meet a minimum weight of food. And they do this to prevent people from going too light and essentially starving themselves and being dangerous in that way. And so when I crossed the finish line of stage 4, they said, okay, let me weigh your pack. And even though I had barely enough calories on paper, my food didn't weigh enough. So it was terrible. And then the next day for stage 5, I was worried I was going to get my food weighed again, and I didn't have enough. So I basically ran this really challenging marathon through sand in the heat on almost no calories. I mean, I had like a pack of oatmeal in the morning and 1 goo, and I was just transcending hunger and burning all my fat stores. It was pretty horrible.
I feel like I've had more carbohydrates than that just to get through this podcast.
Yeah.
I have.
No bonk here.
That makes me not want to do it. I didn't know about. I don't think I knew about that. I think I read your race report at that point, but yeah.
Yeah.
Boy,
I feel like
tough.
that exceeds how much math I'm willing to do for any given event.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I have like my spreadsheet limits, I think, and that would exceed that. I'm also
I had to get past that mindset for this training block. You know, I really am properly fueling now thanks to Kylie Van Horn's help. And I had, training for the Grand to Grand Ultra really embedded a less is more mindset. And I'm like, how little do I need? And I would intentionally do bonk runs to work through, I do medium to long runs with not enough fueling, and then feel exhausted and eat a ton afterward, which is so bad in so many ways. And so it's, better late than never. The first 6 months of this year, I really have been learning to fuel more adequately every hour of every run. And I'm like, oh my God, I can finish a 5-hour run and feel like I can still do stuff with the second half of the day. I'm not so exhausted and starving. So,
as the self-elected PR firm for big carbohydrate, I'm excited to hear this. It's working.
Yeah.
You mentioned your empty nester and your kids are grown and gone now. You've been running basically their entire lives, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And your daughter and her partner helped crew you during this last Hardrock race, which is pretty intense and insane. And I have just like scrolling through, doing some preliminary research for our interview, I found this photo of you crossing the finish line at Western States with both kids running next to you. And I think they're in their teens at that point, maybe. How has their view of or relationship to your running changed throughout the years? Going from whatever it was, like just watching mom do this crazy thing, to like, okay, I'll show up and support you through this like vomit fest vision quest that you just had. How is it changed?
Well, Western States in 2016 was really special because that was the first time they crewed and were involved. So I got into trail and ultra, as more of a 10K and marathon road runner when they were born. But by the time they were little kids, I was transitioning to trail and ultra. And I learned early on that I didn't like having them at the finish line. I would be doing my first 50Ks and just so preoccupied with worrying about them and feeling guilty. And then I'd get to the finish line, they'd just have these stoic, sad faces. And it's just like, this is bad. So pretty early on, I separated my home life from my running life. And in a way that was good because like every Saturday, pretty much, I would do a disappearing act, and that was my husband's time to be the primary parent. And he and the kids would go off and do their own thing, which was great. And so Western States was the first time they all were, it was great until Forest Hill. Like, at Robinson Flat and Michigan Bluff, they're like, yay, Mom, they're all into it. And then I get to Forest Hill and I'm right on 24-hour pace and they're just standing there looking tired. I'm like, where's my headlamp? And they forgot my headlamp, and it was not a good family scene.
Hey, how old are they at this point? Do
They
you remember?
were senior and freshman in high school. So they're 3.5 years apart. So like 14 and 17. Anyway, so they haven't been really involved with my running that much. And I never pushed running on them. They discovered other sports. But then my daughter has become more of a hiker, and then her hiking has evolved she runs the downhills a little bit. She's really outdoorsy, and my son is very outdoorsy because of his affinity for horses and his work in equine and ranching stuff. So I think they just, how to answer your question, they haven't, I think they're impressed by it. But it's very much more my own thing than a family thing, is how I'd say.
Okay. I mean, despite forgetting your headlamp, they do look pretty happy running across the finish line with you. I don't know I think they recovered at some point there.
Yeah, it was super sweet when they ran the track with me. Actually, the best time ever was that High Lonesome, when we were just in this deluge of a biblical storm at the end. And my daughter actually paced me the last part of High Lonesome, which was scary because there was like electrical activity right overhead and flash flooding and stuff. And High Lonesome ends with this mile uphill called Swear Hill, because it's just, you're swearing. And both kids hiked and ran up the hill with me. And my son, bless his heart, he was in barefoot Vans because he's a skateboarder, and they were just filling with water. But they ran through the rain, and that was just a wonderful moment of us, them being more my friends than my kids. Having adult kids is so wonderful, and I'm just loving this stage as a parent, and they're great. So
was there any point in Hardrock where, just because Morgan was there too, crewing, was there any point anybody in your family was just kind of like, wow, Mom, we're kind of worried about you, maybe this isn't such a great hobby for you to do?
No, they were wonderful. They were super supportive. And Brennan, they wore your t-shirts. Like, I got them the Practice Maximum Enthusiasm t-shirts as a visual reminder that I should be like, this is awesome. Like, no matter what. Oh my God.
Like, take those off.
Yeah. It was super funny. Like, my husband, I got him a size too small, and it's like a crop top. So I kept putting up his arms and shaking his bare belly to make me laugh. So that was
which he actually has a Thug Life tattoo on his belly, which is a whole other story.
Yeah, business idea, Brendan. We need Practice Maximum Enthusiasm crop tops.
Yeah,
they won't even make women's cut t-shirts right now. So
lame.
Yeah.
But they were all really wonderfully supportive during Hardrock. I learned early on that my husband is terrible as a crew person. He will just, not only forgetting the headlamp thing, but if I'm like, so it also goes back to the 2018 Uray 100, which is my only DNF that's like a monkey on my back. And I passed out in exhaustion on a pile of drop bags and took a nap at like mile 62 and woke up shivering and soaking wet. And I called him. I'm like, I don't think this is working out. He's like, I'll come get you. Like, he was so happy to have me drop out. It's so he's like leaving the condo to drive to get me. And thankfully my friend and pacer, who had been sleeping in the other room in the condo, she's like, where are you going? She said, oh, no. And she jumped in the truck. And she got to me, and like Morgan was my husband was wanting to like have me drop out and to take me back. And she's like, I do not see blood. I do not see a bone. Let's get going. So I realized that's like the stark contrast of what you need in a Cree person. You need my friend.
Yep.
It also speaks to like the length of your marriage too, where you're like, you're still discovering that you need to, that's not what I want you to do. I don't want you to pick me up.
Yeah.
I want you to not pick
When
me
I
up.
call and say, come pick me up, what I
okay,
mean.
Okay.
It's like, you know how normal people
Right.
have the like, when I say I'm fine, I'm obviously not fine. For ultra runners, it's like when I say I'm not fine and I have a compound fracture, what I mean is I'm fine and you just need to bring me an Uncrustables and send me back out on the trail.
Yeah.
A reverse marriage
Right.
for many other people.
So this is also sort of along the lines of parenting, but in a very different way. There's in your report on Hardrock, you write about running into Billy Yang, the filmmaker who was waiting for his wife Hillary, and you say, I'm just going to read a little section of it, but you had passed her when she was struggling. Now she was charging ahead, feeling like a new person. She looked so thrilled and vibrant when she and her pacer passed me, followed by the exuberant Billy, that I felt an almost maternal happiness for them all. I thought about what good kids they are with bright futures, as if they were barely young adults and I were an octogenarian friend of their parents, because that's how aged and out of it I felt. And to be fair, Billy's like in his mid to late 40s too. I want to say that. So it's not like he's not like that much younger than you. But can you talk about that feeling in that moment? Like you're having a really bad day, but you have this like you remember this moment, obviously, in writing about it.
Oh, I just remember, well, one, I just felt so happy for Hillary reviving and passing me. Like she should have been in front of me. So I was worried. I mean, this is the backstory is that when she had a really struggling high lonesome, she and I shared miles in high lonesome, and we both finished during the golden hour, which was like one of her hardest hundreds ever. And she's much faster than I am, so she should finish ahead of me. So I was just so happy for her that she had revived herself, and she and Emily Hoggett and Billy Yang were just like full of life. And I did feel so different and so much older than them. And I often have that feeling in the trail and ultra scene that like I'm this grizzled old veteran and they're all these youngsters. And sometimes I feel kind of curmudgeonly, but this was one of the instances where I just felt really happy for like, oh, look at them go. The sport is in good hands. Like this is the way it should be. This is just a feeling like that.
I love that.
That was one of my favorite parts of that piece that you wrote.
Yeah. So
because there's a photo of Billy too, like, and he's like, so he's just lying to you. You're doing great. You're looking fantastic, and you're like, no, I'm not.
I know, and my face was so swollen from I look at that, I'm like, oh my god, I aged just in those 46
race photos, man. Oof. So in your writing, you kind of have a mix of first person essays, but you also do talk to other people and you chronicle other people, again, particularly women living and competing in like Colorado mountain races. How do you think about both telling your own story and telling other people's stories? And like what stories do you gravitate towards there?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't plan it out that much. I just stumble across interesting people. I mean, for example, last week, I wrote about Liz Halbert, who I just happened to, she's a Durango-based incredible runner I was talking to you about something else, and I realized she has this really moving story about this medical odyssey she's been through in her late 20s. So I wrote about that. For tomorrow's newsletter, I happen to be interviewing Nick Curry, so Jamil's younger brother, who lives part-time in Telluride. And it's just because he's doing this really quirky thing here in Telluride that I thought that was so cool and goofy and sweet. So I decided to write about that. And then in the process, I'm like, oh man, I should check in with Nick Curry. Like he's this, Yeah, I guess the thing that appeals to me about both those characters and to others is they're both kind of under the radar, um, extremely accomplished ultra runners who are not clamoring for attention. They're just like doing their own thing. Like Nick's not very active on social media. He's, and I don't think many people know he's this American record holder in the 24-hour, all the things he's done. So yeah, I just said, "Hey Nick, can I talk to you?" And I interviewed him yesterday, so I'll have a write up about it tomorrow. So it's more ad hoc,
Yeah.
honestly.
So like I feel like I've been reading your work and your Substack long enough that I'm like so Sarah pilled that like for me like the experience or like the stories I have around aging are like I'm just going to become amazing at mountain running and eventually get into hard rock. And I feel like it is this amazing reframe where like I just have the privilege of like entering into the sport at a time where it's not just it's like pretty normal that like yeah, women age and become incredible at mountain running. But I think sometimes I can take that for granted. And I wonder if like you had any folks that like you looked up to, or if you had any mentors, or if maybe your storytelling and seeking out particularly these women who have amazing stories of chasing adventure in midlife is you doing that now.
Yeah, I've been so lucky to have great mentors, starting with Ann Trayson. I mean, back in the
Hell of a mentor.
yeah,
You might have heard of her.
back in the 1990s when I was getting out of grad school and struggling career-wise and becoming a new mom, I was living in the North Berkeley area, and this, woman who's like a gazelle would just trot by my house almost daily. I'm like, who is that? And they found, oh, that's Ann Trayson, who lives right around the corner. And I got to know her. And so that was my introduction to the trail world and how I first heard about Western states. And I wrote profile of Ann Trayson, and she was, and that's how I got plugged into the East Bay area trail and ultra scene. So that was pretty amazing. It's like, I joke, it's like, being a soccer player and suddenly having Mia Hamm show up, to kick some balls around with you. But since then, I mean, it's not just, it's men as well. It's older. I just really am so appreciative for the people in this sport, whether it's, Diana Fitzpatrick or John Trent, showing me the way. And now I feel like I'm trying to do that for others too. I'm so grateful I have women in my life in their 60s who are friends and mentor and still running really well, like my friend Susanna Bond, or I mean, Becky Bates, so many of them. And so if I can be that person to other women in their 30s and 40s, and that's great. I would like to be.
Do you want to talk about the book you're working on?
my real ultra.
Yes. Yes,
Oh yeah.
An ultra of sitting down and typing.
Yeah. Well, so I'm so I'm working on a memoir, which I've been working on for over a year. And I'm hesitant to talk about it because so many people say, "Oh, I'm working on a memoir," and then they DNF it. It seems so cliche. But mine is basically a memoir about midlife aging and acceptance. And it's told in the framework of that Grand to Grand Ultra from last fall, which I went to at age 55 to confront doubts and desires and ultimately to grapple with what I've been running from and running toward. And so the story is about how it turned out that the big challenge was not doing the race as much as it is, finishing, making peace with my older and slower body and improving my relationship with running and with my lifelong partner of 40 years and with myself. So that's the story in a nutshell. But what I did is the classic memoir mistake of I did a first draft of 90,000 words, which is about 300 pages that was more of a Gen X coming of age story and like what happened to Sarah and all the crazy shit she did in high school. and everything so I had to go through that discovery draft of processing a lot of stuff from my childhood and adolescence and then say, you know what? This shouldn't be the story of my life. It should be a story from my life. And I really need to reframe it as a midlife memoir. So I'm starting over. That's what I'm doing now. It's not easy, but I'm working on it.
I do. I know you say it's like cliche. This is not to deal with the podcast, but I think like people are always like, "Oh, I was told somebody I was writing a memoir," and they're like, "Really? What have you done?" And it's because people think of memoirs as like the celebrity's memoir, where they're like, "I was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania," and then it goes their entire life. But like, really, what you're talking about is, which I think is way more effective and maybe a little more humble, where you just like you're like, "Here's a memoir of 5 years." Or a period of my life, which I think is a way better book for most people because most of us don't care. You're not Al Pacino, or whoever.
Whose memoir take.
Whose memoir is not that great. But you
You've
know what
read
I mean?
the Al Pacino memoir?
Yeah. My dad got it for me for Christmas, so I did.
Amazing.
Read it, yes, and there was like a couple good things in there, but also. But now you have that draft to go back if you need flashbacks. Like
I know it definitely will. It definitely will flash back to scenes from the past, but it won't make the backstory the front story, which was the mistake I made with the first draft. But
you didn't delete it, did you?
It's just it's such a hard process, so full of self-doubt.
I love that, though. I feel like it's such an extraordinary act of, like, again, like, I think great memoir take, Brendan, like, commanding that people must be, like, this famous to ride the memoir ride is, like, so boring. I think everyone has incredible stories within them. And if you have the ability to get it out there, then, like, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
That's why Humans of New York works so well.
Yeah.
Literally, everybody has a story.
Exactly.
Yeah, and ultimately, I want people to, if I get this done and published, when I get it done and published, I hope people will read it and say, this is a book about midlife, aging, and acceptance, rather than saying, this is what happened to Sarah. Like, I want it to be a book as much about ideas as it is about what happened to me and this crazy week in the desert,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but tacking it onto that adventure is like a really good structure, I think, too.
Hopefully.
People were compelled forward to find out how it ends or whatever, and then
yeah. So we'll see. All I can do is work on it, but 3 steps forward, 1 or 2 back.
I feel like One Crazy Week in the Desert would be a hell of a title.
Well, the working title, I don't know if I'm going to go with it, but the working title right now is Running Stages, because it's about a stage race, but it's also about life phases and the evolution of a runner.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then subtitle, a book about midlife, aging, acceptance.
I don't know.
With an Oxford comma.
An odyssey of midlife, aging, and acceptance. Something like that. Yeah. This is super fun, Sarah.
Yeah.
Thanks for agreeing to do this.
I'm so touched you asked me on. So I was kind of tickled to be asked on this show.
Well, a lot of your messages in a bottle have washed up on my personal emotional shore. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you.
How good are you with a map, Brendan?
I would say I'm like solid B plus.
Yeah, willing to bet on that. Put some money on the line.
I have never been rescued from a wilderness or a backcountry adventure.
Nice.
And
there you go.
I don't even know if I would say I've been lost, actually. Yeah, I don't think I've been lost.
If you're interested in pushing your limits and or just improving your basic map skills so that you can continue your streak of not getting rescued and not getting lost, you can put your orienteering skills to the test at the Go Wild Marin Challenge on October 11th.
I'm reading about this, and I feel like this is like above my skill set. Like, I feel like I'm pretty good at like staying alive and staying on the trail and getting back to my car and getting to alpine lakes or peaks. But like, this might be very difficult, actually.
Yep. But this definitely isn't your average race. It's a map-based adventure that blends navigation, strategy, and stunning open space trails in Marin County. So whether you're a beginner or a seasoned pro like Brendan here, if you're alone or you want to grab a teammate like Brendan here, everyone can test their skills and enjoy the thrill of wandering around Marin County with a map in hand. Barkley before brunch.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Done in a day, 4 hours, $20. Looks beautiful. Check it out on UltraSignup.
Okay. Well, can you believe Sarah seemed like she would do Hardrock again if given the chance, if she like got in the lottery again? Can you believe that?
I mean, absolutely not. After like reading what definitely sounds a little bit like a prisoner of war like memoir after running this race, seems like there's like a non-small amount of like high alpine trauma tied up in that, but also as a writer, I deeply understand and respect the like it's either a good time or a good story. And, what are we doing if not getting out there to just go and gather more good stories?
Yeah. No, and it's like I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. You're right. It's like, yeah, you know what, I could do better next time. And also I forget if I think she's 56, but like she's looking at all these women. I think there's like a 63-year-old woman who finished pretty fast too, in my opinion. So she's like looking ahead 7 years or whatever. Like these are your role models.
Right.
You're like,
yes.
Yeah, if I just dial in the nutrition, and like, the curiosity about going the opposite direction. So. And
there's 8 women older than you finishing well under the cutoff, doing amazing. You're like, oh yeah, all data points to the fact that like this was just my first crack at it. Let's go. I've got another decade of finessing this baby left in me.
Yeah. Or more, maybe.
Who knows? More.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, so sort of hearing about how she thinks about writing and her running, and someone else who is, do you identify as a blogger, blog adjacent writer?
I would say that, but I think it sounds like you're old if you say blogger.
It does sound old.
Yeah.
It does sound like I'm a professional live journaler. Like if you met someone who was still actively on Tumblr, it would be kind of shocking.
If I end up talking about my career at some point in public speaking, I always say, does anybody here remember newspapers? And then like a handful of people raise their hands, and then I joke like, oh yeah, they used to be this thing where all the news was printed on a piece of paper and it would come in like on your doorstep or in the mail or whatever, and you'd read the whole thing. It's like a joke. And I feel like almost the same way about blogs. Like, so Google had this website called Blogspot. Anyone could write it. It was like Substack, but it didn't get emailed to you, so.
It was like a telegram or a cassette tape.
Yes, right? So.
I do feel like long form writing and the personal essay is having, I mean, maybe not a second life, maybe isn't quite the most accurate way, but there is like a new life in it. Like the personal essay is thriving. The long form serialized memoir is thriving online, and I feel like she really epitomizes that kind of writing especially when it comes to running, and just because she has accumulated such a robust body of work because she's been in the game for so long, I think it really adds up to something that's like pretty incredible and extremely fun to dive into. Yeah,
and like just people having fun with running. I'm sorry, I just blew that in there. People having, like, what I'm trying to say here is, I think, like, what's coming back is people having fun with writing. Like,
yes,
maybe we did with blogging, but you're not having to go pitch an idea to an editor and say, hey, I think this would be a good story. What do you think? And it's like, no, I'll just
and
put
they're
it
like,
on my
it's
Substack.
good, but can we actually make it a list and have it be takeaways about how to get ripped in 6 days?
Yeah, in the worst case scenario, for sure. Yes. But yeah, so she's just like able to do her own thing, and I really enjoy that. Cheers to that.
Thanks for joining us on the Trailhead. If you love this episode, leave us a review, share it with your trail crew, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss an adventure. Give us a follow on Instagram at trailheadpod. And you can reach us anytime at trailhead@ultrasignup.com We'd love to hear your stories, questions, guest ideas, or just to say hi. And don't forget to check out all of the shows in the Ultra Podcast Network. We're building something special, and it's just for you. We'll see you every other week, right here on the Trailhead.